Hello adventurers! Most people only know about the pretty looking places in Singapore. But have you been to its darker side? In this video, I'm gonna bring you to our less known locations that ties very strongly to the darkest chapters of our history. Let's begin. Welcome to the Changi Beach. Many comes here for recreation today, be it for fishing, picnicking by the beach, and even surfing. But this is also where tens of thousands of Chinese men were executed. Back in World War II, shortly after Singapore fell into the hands of the Japanese, Lieutenant General Tomoyuki Yamashita ordered a mass screenings of male Chinese between the age of 18 to 50 in order to curb potential uprising. Those suspected of being anti-Japanese were rounded up and brought to remote beaches and forests such as Changi Beach, and they were never seen again. Accounts from fortunate survivors records that many were gunned down on this beach and their bodies left to the elements. Some are even thrown into the sea. For us in Singapore, this tragedy is called the Sokching Massacre, which means to purge through cleansing. But for the Japanese, this is called Dai Kensho, which just means the Great Inspection. The scale of this massacre was staggering. Estimates say it's somewhere between 25,000 to 50,000 victims. To remember thousands who perished in this atrocity, a war memorial was built. It's also often called the Chopstick Monument, which is quite fitting because, you know, Chinese, we use chopsticks. But all jokes aside, I really can't imagine the horrors that thousands of these people went through. Let's hope we'll never forget about this and never let it happen again. Another dark side from this era is the Changi prison. Actually, after reading a few sources, they all seem to suggest that the whole of Changi is a nightmare.
The region was named after an iconic Changi tree that used to grow here, until it was cut down to avoid it being used as a landmark in bombing attacks. Changi was mostly a swampy area. There was only the Changi prison and the military barracks here.
After Singapore surrendered to the Japanese, the civilians and the soldiers, many of whom are Australians, were marched into Changi prison to be interned as prisoners of war, where their resilience will be truly tested. They actually have a very nice chapel and museum where they retain some of the original prison and tell the full story of the prisoners, but they don't allow video recording inside. So let me take you through a series of photos. The main prison complex was only designed to hold 600 people, but at its peak, it was holding over 10,000 prisoners. Many of the prisoners were used as forced slave labor around Malaya, the most infamous being the Burma Death Railway, which got its name from the sheer number of casualties due to the harsh working condition there. The combination of overcrowding and deprivation in Changi led to rampant malnutrition and disease, claiming many more lives. However, despite the hopelessness, many prisoners kept morale high by throwing concerts, recitals, and even published newspaper called Pow Wow and the Changi Guardian. Very creative names. Some were painting, quilting, and even taking photos. If you're wondering, how did they get a camera into prison? Well, Sergeant John Richie Johnston received a Kodak Baby Brownie camera from his wife. It was very precious to him, so he smuggled it while he was interred in Changi. I couldn't verify which pictures were taken by him, but his camera is now in the museum display, and probably some of these photos are credits to him. Thankfully, come September 1945, the Japanese surrendered and the prison was liberated. And in a twist of fate, the Japanese, who were sentenced to death for their war crimes in Malaya, were executed in this very prison where they caused so much torment to others. Today, Singapore has moved on beautifully, and nothing else encapsulates this better than the Japanese Cemetery Park. The cemetery was built in the 1890s. Initially, it was meant for destitute Japanese prostitutes called the Karayuki-san, which translates to women who have gone overseas. Over time, the cemetery also became home to Japanese of all professions who called Singapore their forever home. The flowers, the well-kept grounds and gravestones are all beautiful. But for me, the true beauty is over here. These are the memorials for the Japanese military casualties, soldiers who committed suicide after the Japanese surrendered, and those executed as war criminals. It is said that they took soil from the execution site at Changi prison and brought them here to the memorial site. So some of this soil originated from Changi. I don't know, man. Personally, I don't know if I want a memorial to be built in my house for people who passed away because they came to my house and killed my family. But here we are, and that's why I find it so beautiful. Today, I think for most Singaporeans, Japan is one of our favorite countries. We love ramen, katsus, animes, Attack on Titan, Spy X Family, Demon Slayer. They're all very popular here. And a lot of us goes to Japan regularly for holidays. I myself just came back from Kyoto last month. So I think we're cool with Japan. Shingaporu, Nihon, Tomodachi desu. Right behind me is the McDonald's house, which just looks like some sort of an office building. But for those who knows its history, it's a reminder of the fragility of peace. On the 10th of March 1965, Singapore faced one of its deadliest peacetime attacks. A bomb exploded in the McDonald's house, claiming 3 victims and injuring 33 others. The culprits were 2 Indonesian Marines who were carrying out their covert operations under the Konfrontasi. They were eventually caught, tried, and hanged, which resulted in a diplomatic rift between Indonesia and Singapore. While these Marines were considered saboteurs in Singapore, they were regarded as heroes back in Indonesia. Recently, Indonesia got a new warship, and they even named the warship after the Marines, which ended up reopening some old wounds in Singapore. But honestly, I think most Indonesians and Singaporeans are very cool with each other. I myself was an Indonesian before becoming a Singapore citizen. The most hate I would get are those jokes that, hey, you come here, steal our jobs, steal our women, because I marry a Singaporean woman. Yeah, so history and politics just can be a little bit touchy at times. Actually, at first when I heard about the McDonald's house, I thought there would be a McDonald's here. But actually it's named after the British governor who used to rule Singapore in the colonial eras. So you could easily admire this building along the Orchard Road near the Dhoby Ghaut train station. This is the site of the tragedy that resulted in reforms in Singapore Building Code and the formation of a dedicated disaster rescue team. On the morning of 15th of March 1986, Singapore experienced its worst civil engineering disaster. The Hotel New World, a 6th-story building, collapsed and trapped 50 people within its rubble. It triggered the largest ever rescue operation in Singapore's history. Over 500 rescuers worked tirelessly over the next 4 days, risking their lives to rescue any survivors and collect the bodies of the deceased. Sadly, only 17 people were pulled out alive. The other 33 lost their lives. So, what went wrong? After investigations, it was revealed that the building was grossly under-designed and the disaster was caused by a structural failure. To save costs, the owner of the building, Mr. Ng Kong Lin, hired an unqualified person to design the building and requested for cheaper materials to build it. Consequently, the capacity of the key beams and supports were overestimated. Supposedly, the designer didn't even take into account the weight of the building. To make it worse, they installed new aircon units and water tanks on the roof, which added on to the load that the building couldn't support. After all that cost savings, on that fateful day, the support columns finally buckled, and Mr. Ng Kong Lim had to pay the ultimate price, unfortunately bringing along 33 others with him. The ruins of Hotel New World were completely demolished and a whole new building now stands in its place. It's actually another hotel. Although none of the old buildings remain, it has left a very strong legacy, resulting in stricter regulations and enforcement. Safety checks became more rigorous and engineering standards improved significantly. It's another step towards better safety, but also a reminder that safety codes are written in blood. We also have a whole new disaster response unit that's called DART, which stands for Disaster Assistance Rescue Team. Never again will we be caught off guard during calamities. If you've been enjoying this dark history journey, please leave a like. This was very expensive for me to make, so your likes will be a great encouragement for me to make more videos like this. Next, we're actually in Bukit Ho Swee, the site of the most destructive but the most pivotal fire in Singapore's history. Back in the 1960s, Singapore looked nothing like this. Instead of tall, high-density, very organized concrete housing flats, you'll find sporadic colonies of squatter settlements that we call the kampongs. The kampong houses are mostly made out of wood and topped with zinc roofs. And little do they know that they are basically living in tinder boxes. On the afternoon of May 25th, 1961, a stray spark ignited a house fire. The combination of strong winds and flammable hearts resulted in the rapid growth and spread of the fire. To make things worse, that day was the Hari Raya Haji, which is a big holiday for most Malay Muslims, who make up the majority of the firefighting force in Singapore. Many had to be urgently recalled from their leaves to help fight the fire. The fire was eventually extinguished by 10 p.m. on the same day, but not before it claimed 4 lives, injuring 82, destroying 2,800 homes, rendering 16,000 people homeless. The scale and the devastation of the fire gave urgency and momentum for the government to accelerate their efforts in urban planning and public housing. And amazingly, within just 9 months, all 16,000 survivors affected were successfully rehoused. The fire site itself was acquired and redeveloped into another public housing estate. By 1970s, this whole area houses around 45,000 people. Today, actually I don't know how many, but looks like a lot. There's a lot of flats here. On hindsight, although the fires were horrific, they were actually instrumental in the success of early public housing projects in Singapore. There were already a few fires before this, and the HDB was already building housing estates. But in those early projects, it was politically very challenging to rehome the kampong dwellers into the HDB estates. Most of them preferred their kampong dwellings and didn't see much benefit of moving into public housing. However, with the mass fire, not only that they have little reason to reject the rehousing offers, the government was also able to acquire the kampong land and redevelop it into more public housing. In fact, conspiracy theorists love to allege that the fire is caused by the government so that they can build more housing. Fast forward to today, 80% of Singaporeans live in these modern housing flats built by the HDB. I've been walking around trying to find if there's a fire memorial, but I can't seem to find it. So if anyone knows where it is, please let me know and I'll update in the video. So, did you like learning about Singapore? We've only scratched the surface in this video. So, how about check out this next one where I've visited every single train station on the longest train line in Singapore. I'll see you there.